So, welcome to this live training where I'm going to be talking about anxiety acceptance and your superpower. Do just let me know if you're watching live that you can see me and hear me, just checking everything. So, you excuse the lighting, I'm not at my normal place as you can see. The lighting's a bit weird here. So, let's dive into this topic: anxiety acceptance and your superpower. When people feel anxious without realizing it, they can often become resistant to that anxiety, and that can actually escalate the anxiety. So, how do we deal with this? So, this is what I'm going to talk about in this session. I'm going to go to my slides and I'm going to share some concepts. So, my screen is just turned off, so let's just check that. What fun. Alright, don't know what's going on there, so we'll just roll with it. So, why is this important to understand? Firstly, if we don't understand anxiety, then we're not understanding how we're generating anxiety, and we can become anxious about our anxiety. This is something that I experienced, and that just makes us feel more anxious. Remember the concept of neuroplasticity: whatever we practice, we get good at. So if we practice anxiety, we can get better at generating anxiety. So anxiety is a bit like a smoke alarm. Sometimes it gets triggered by the kettle. So we're not actually in danger, there's no fire, but the kettle has triggered the smoke alarm. And as we've just said, with kind of neuroplasticity, whatever we practice, we get good at. So that can happen more and more. Imagine the smoke alarm being really sensitive and it keeps getting set off. Okay, and that's what can happen with anxiety. We can become more and more anxious about more and more things. So some of the frustrations of dealing with anxiety is you kind of feel like you're firefighting. You're trying lots of things to try and resolve the anxiety, but it's not working. It's not your fault, by the way. You feel like it is your fault, but it really isn't. And you feel like you failed because you haven't resolved it. But again, it's not your fault. Actually, it's just a sign that you haven't got the resources and tools that you need to deal with the anxiety. The good news is that when you understand how you're generating anxiety, how you're experiencing anxiety, you can stop generating or fueling the anxiety. And I'll explain a bit more what I mean by that in a moment. When you experience anxiety, this is important information, and it's important information that you're not feeling safe and there's just some action that you need to take. Okay? And the key thing is that you can learn to quieten the anxiety. And I speak from not only my professional experience, but from my personal experience. I experienced a lot of anxiety and panic attacks when I was younger. I remember one time going away when I was a student to a conference, and two friends were supposed to come with me and they both bailed out, and for some reason I just felt really anxious. The whole weekend I was feeling panicky. I was finding it really difficult to interact with people, and at that time I didn't really understand some of what I'm going to be sharing with you in this session. Had I understood it, because when I did understand it, it completely transformed my experience. I'm not saying that I never feel anxious, but the degree to which I feel anxiety and the frequency is much, much less. All right. If you have just joined me, just let me know. You can see me, hear me, say hi. Let me know where you're watching this, because I'm actually broadcasting to two different platforms at the moment: Facebook and YouTube, which is showing off a bit. But anyway, just let me know where you're watching. That'd be interesting to know. So you can learn to quieten your anxiety. So what you need to understand is, as I've just said, is when you understand how you're generating the anxiety, you can stop generating the anxiety and stop fueling the anxiety. So I'm going to give you just a little taster of what I cover in my Building Resilience course. We're just going to cover a little bit of Module 2, which is about breaking patterns. So Catherine says, I'm from Germany and looks like you're watching on YouTube. Catherine, is that right? Thanks for saying hi. So yeah, we're just going to focus on a little portion of what I teach people in my Building Resilience training. So the key thing I want you to understand is the difference between emotions and feelings. Okay, so let's just see if I can show my... No, I'm trying to put a picture of me, but that's not working. All right, so difference between emotions and feelings. What I mean to consider is that some people say that the sensations we experience in our body that are almost automatic, they happen very quickly. Sensations are emotions and the physical sensations. So for example, if you open your front door and there's a hungry tiger licking its lips wanting to eat you, your body is going to produce a response very quickly. Now, what can happen if we don't have tolerance of our sensations, let's say for instance I'm experiencing symptoms and I'm not very good at just kind of sitting with the symptoms, what I tend to do is my mind kicks in. I start thinking about the symptoms. I start catastrophizing. I say to myself, am I ever going to get well? I'm probably never going to get well. Then I'm going to be generating feelings, in this case, feelings of anxiety. So just want to make that distinction that sensations, emotions are different to feelings. Feelings come from our thinking, whereas the emotion comes from the body's response. It's the primitive part of the brain that sees the tiger and just responds with an emotion of fear, whereas the thinking brain is a bit slower. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let me know in the chat. This is important to understand because if we understand that difference, then it is possible to develop our window of tolerance to those sensations, those emotions and those physical sensations. Okay, but what someone's just given me a thumbs down. That's fine. Interested to know why you've given me a thumbs down. Let me know. Maybe you hit the wrong button, or maybe you meant it. So let me know. I'm really interested to get feedback. If you disagree with something, that's completely fine. So let me know. You might have some insights that help me shed light. All right. So what I'd like to understand is that if we experience a sensation, let's say we notice, for instance, that our heart is beating fast and our palms are sweating. All right. Let's say we're at point A. If at point A we say, oh no, I'm feeling anxious, my heart's beating, my palms are sweating, then we're going to get to point B. And if we at point B do the same, say, oh no, I'm experiencing more sensation, my palms are sweating even more and my heart's beating even more and I'm feeling that sensation in my stomach, that's really bad, then we're going to go to point C, we're going to get to point D. So that is a full-blown panic attack. And I now realise that's how I generated panic attacks. So Gail says, because I had such a travail getting here, and am I in the right place? You are in the right place, Gail. Okay, nice to have you join us. All right. And I'm wondering, when you say getting here, are you talking about travelling or are you just talking about finding me on YouTube? Just maybe clarify that. All right, so this is how we can exacerbate our anxiety, okay? Gail says, is this a group thing or not? If you're referring to the resilience group coaching, no, this is just a live training for everybody. Is that what you mean? All right. So that's how we can generate a full-blown panic attack. If we understand that, then we can understand that if I change the way I respond to those sensations, if I say to myself, I'm noticing that my palms are sweating, my heart is beating fast, but this is a false alarm. There isn't a tiger in this situation. Maybe let's say if I'm in a social situation and I have experienced social anxiety, which I did at one point, if I say to myself, okay, I am safe, there's no tiger here, if someone is not being very pleasant to talk to, I'll just say nice to talk to you and move on and go and find someone else to talk to. All right, so if we notice those sensations more quickly at point A, and instead of having those alarmist thoughts, then the sensations can start to calm down. Just to put it another way, difference between resistance and acceptance. Now, I think I saw this graphic somewhere else. I think someone else created it, so I'm not taking credit for it. If anyone knows who did come up with this, then I'm happy to give that person credit. But imagine resistance is, this is where I am. This is where I want to be. But if I'm saying to myself, I'm here sucks, I hate being here, then that is resistance. And what happens when we resist is that we're kind of saying to ourselves, I have to avoid this. I have to avoid this anxiety. So we might do things to avoid being in an anxious situation. Someone might avoid social situations, for example. And in essence, they're saying, I can't handle this. All right. And sometimes we're saying, I have to fix this. So this is when we try lots of different techniques to try and resolve the anxiety. And great if that works, but if it doesn't, then we need to take a different approach. So to put this another way, we experience a sensation, we have an unhelpful thought, oh no, this is bad, and then that means we experience anxiety. If we're experiencing anxiety, that means we're going to have more sensation in the body, and the sensation is going to escalate, so we have more negative thoughts, more anxiety, and then we're just creating that upward loop. All right, so acceptance is about saying, okay, I'm here and that's okay. All right, so see that difference between resistance and acceptance. So let's talk about breaking patterns. So consider that strategies to soothe ourselves is part of the strategy. Okay, we want to soothe our physiology, calm our physiology, but we also need to solve the situation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So soothing strategies, one is building capacity. Okay, so if we go back to this window of tolerance, if we're able to build our capacity to tolerate the sensations, the emotions, and the physical sensations, then we don't need to go to our mind and, for instance, catastrophize, chastise ourselves. Okay, if I'm experiencing, let's say, a symptom because I've overdone it, and I'm able just to say, okay, I'm experiencing this sensation, okay, but I can be with it. I don't have to go to my mind and create alarmist thoughts. Then we're actually building our window of tolerance of those sensations. We're able to stay with that sensation without generating anxiety and stress. Okay. So we can learn strategies to connect to our body, because what happens often in this scenario here, we disconnect from our body and we go to our mind. Okay, and people can become very good at kind of staying in their mind, creating lots of thoughts, as I say, catastrophizing, intellectualizing rather than experiencing emotion. Okay, so we can learn to connect to our body. We can do that through strategies known as somatics, but in very simple terms, that might be just practicing yoga, tai chi, qigong. These are ways of connecting to our body. Okay, and we can learn strategies to regulate our nervous system. Okay, solving strategies include resolving trauma, making mindset shifts, and establishing healthy boundaries. And in order to do that, we need to build our self-esteem. If setting boundaries with others in particular, and ourselves, because setting boundaries for ourselves is an act of self-care, then we need to work on our self-esteem. So, I'm going to focus just on two areas very briefly. One is around capacity, building capacity, and I'll talk a little bit about mindset shifts. I talk about this in much more detail when I work with people, when I train people. So if we think about acceptance, then acceptance doesn't mean that we're saying that this is forever. If I notice I'm experiencing anxiety, we're just recognizing this is not forever. Okay, this is temporary, and therefore that is a mindset shift. Okay, because often people, maybe not consciously, but when they're experiencing anxiety, part of them is saying, oh, this is going to last forever. I had that experience where I felt like I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel because I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. Didn't have any understanding of what I've talked about already, about how I was perpetuating that anxiety. So that's the first thing, recognizing that this is not forever. Okay. Second thing, this is not part of your identity. I remember even as a young person, when I was about 10, I'd hear people say, oh, he's just an anxious person, as if that was fixed forever. And I remember thinking, is that really true, that that's just the way you are? As i.e. it's permanent? So it's not part of your identity. We want to make the mindset shift to actually, I'm experiencing anxiety. This is a temporary experience. Okay, again, that's a mindset shift. Okay, so, and the last thing is about not resisting. Okay, so we've talked a bit about that already. I want to share a very simple framework which I call SLAC, S-L-A-C. Okay, so you don't have to love it. You don't have to love that you're experiencing these sensations right now. All right, but that's not being in resistance. All right, so acceptance is just saying, for now, I am here. All right, I allow it. It's okay. I accept it. And I can experience this. I am still safe. This may be uncomfortable. For instance, one of my clients who did have social phobia kind of took on board this concept that if she was experiencing some anxiety, she didn't have to run away from it. She could say, my body thinks I'm in danger. This is a false alarm. There's no tiger. Maybe I'm remembering a past experience where I had a social situation and someone behaved in an unpleasant way. And that's what I'm remembering. But right now in this situation, I'm safe. In that situation, I didn't have the resources that made me think, actually, this person is being unpleasant. I don't have to listen to this person. I can just walk away. All right. And she found, and she was a civil servant, a very high flying civil servant, but she, before we worked together, she recognized that, or she was telling me that any time she was in a social situation, she'd immediately start to generate sensations in her body. Her cheeks would get very red. She'd feel sweaty. And I remember her saying to me, it's like, can you see the feelings of discomfort that I'm experiencing? And I said, no, not really. It was obvious to her, but it wasn't obvious to me, okay, because it wasn't showing up. It wasn't like sweat was pouring off her. All right. And she learned how to be much more comfortable in those situations by just understanding how she was generating anxiety and how she could generate more calm, more peace, more confidence. So let's talk about this simple framework called SLAC, S-L-A-C. So first of all, we need to start with where you are. So acceptance is about saying, okay, this is where I'm here right now. Okay. Actually, I've got the wrong slide there. It should be the acceptance slide, which is just saying, I don't know how that happened. Okay, I'm not going to go back there. But this is just saying, okay, this is where I am. I'm here. It's okay. Okay, start with where you are. Second thing we need to do is to learn how to feel, how to just experience that sensation, that emotion, without going to our head and catastrophizing, chastising ourselves, creating stories. Okay? We need to allow what we're experiencing. Okay? This is about saying yes to our experience. And I suspect there are times when you've done this. For example, I can remember very vividly when I had a relationship breakup, and it was the first time I'd had a really big, significant relationship breakup, and it was really emotionally tough, and I decided to say yes, to allow myself to experience this intensity of emotion and just be with it. Okay, I allowed myself to say, okay, something important is happening here. This can teach me something. This can teach me something about where I'm not free yet. Okay? And finally, I like to consider that change can happen. These sensations can shift if we just allow ourselves to experience them. There is research that says an emotion will last about 90 seconds if we allow ourselves to experience it and for it to move through. But what can happen, according to these researchers, is that we perpetuate those sensations. We re-trigger them by our thinking, by going to our head and creating more thought. Okay, oh no, this is terrible, I'm in danger, I'm not going to survive, etc. And that just exacerbates the anxiety. So I've talked for quite a bit. I'm going to pause there. I'd really be interested in hearing what's your takeaway. What is one action you're going to take? If you've got any questions about what I've said, pop them in the chat. If you're watching the replay, just pop hashtag replay to let me know you're watching the replay. If you'd like to know more about the Building Resilience course, I'm going to be starting a group course in August. If you'd like to know more about that, either put the word group in the chat and I'll send you details, or you can get in touch. So if you've got any questions, put them in the chat. If you are watching on Facebook, you can tag me, and that way I'll get notified that you've got a question. But if not, let's pause there. Maybe we'll end with a very brief relaxation. If you'd like that, just let me know. Okay, I've just seen a few more comments. Sorry, I forgot the time. This was no problem, Thea. Okay, if it's asking about group, I will send you details. All right, so let's pause for very brief relaxation. I invite you to just close your eyes. If you are in a situation where it's not safe to close your eyes, then don't close your eyes. But If it is safe, I invite you to close your eyes and just take a breath. As you breathe in through your nose, if that's comfortable, into your belly, breathing out of your nose, as long as that's comfortable. As you breathe in and out, just find your natural rhythm. You might be aware of some of the different techniques. There's the 7-11 breathing technique where you breathe in for 7, you breathe out on a count of 11, or you might do 4-7. There's box breathing where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, and then repeat. If I do that, I just do it very briefly. It's not my favourite method. There's a method that Andrew Huberman teaches where you breathe in and then you take an extra micro breath, and this helps fill all the little capillaries and helps you expel the carbon dioxide. It goes like this. I'm making the noise as I breathe out just so you can get a sense of it. So you take a slow breath in and then a quick breath in and then you breathe out slowly. So that's something you might try. I prefer, Silver Moon says hi, so I prefer just to find my natural rhythm when it comes to breathing. So breathing in, just holding my breath for a moment, breathing out, just ensuring the out breath is a little longer than the in breath. And as you breathe in and out, I invite you just to consider that you can build your capacity to experience sensation without going to your mind saying, oh no, this is terrible. You can say this is okay. Obviously, as long as you're not being chased by a tiger. But if you are in a situation where there isn't an immediate threat, a real threat, then it's okay to say to yourself, this is a false alarm. I am safe right now. Maybe I'm just remembering an old experience. But right now I can choose to let go of that. I can breathe into that part of the body where I'm noticing sensations. I can just focus on that act of breathing in, breathing out. And as I do that, I'm building my capacity, my window of tolerance. It's fine if this is something that I practice. It's okay if I don't master it right away. But I know that whatever I practice, I will get good at. And I know that because I know that practicing anxiety meant I got good at that. It is possible for me to learn to be really rubbish at generating anxiety and really good at generating feelings of safety, calm and confidence. So as I say, I'm always interested to hear what your takeaways are, what action you're going to take. So feel free to let me know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Keep going. You've got this. Wishing you great health. And bye for now.